inspired, fully engaged. You're tuning in to Reality with Vicki Gunvalson.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Reality with Vicki, living inspired and fully engaged. And I'm super excited to have Michelle Arpin Begina, did I say your name right?
You did.
On today. And so we're going to talk about some really important things that I think are important to you women. I know there might be some gentlemen tuning in, but the majority of our viewership is women. And as you know, Michelle, I'm a financial planner and insurance advisor. And money is a tool to me. It's just a tool to create the life that you wish, whether you're a charitable contributor, whether you want to have a peaceful life, we need to have money. And money can be the root of all evil. Money can bring stress into our lives. And I think your story is so important for so many listeners to hear about. So I wanted to kind of give you the platform and tell us, the viewers, a little bit about yourself and then how you got into what you're doing.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited about what you're doing, especially talking to women about money, which is a passion of mine as well, because I think we're socialized that money is something that is outside of our control as we grow up. So I think it's super important to get really grounded in who we are. My money story really started as far back as I can remember. I mean, my first memory of money was when I was 5 years old, and my father asked me if he could borrow money for my piggy bank. And I had just woken up, I was still sleeping in my bed, and he was standing at the dresser where the piggy bank was, and I actually asked him, "What do you need the money for?"
Good for
and
you.
He said, "Cigarettes." And I said, "No, you can't have the money." Well, he took the money in front of me anyway. And
violation, right? It's like a violation that he would do that after you said no at 5 years old. It's a violation.
It was totally a violation of my boundaries, total disrespect. And the look on his face was like contempt that I had said no. And I couldn't put any of my feelings into words then, but I remember crying out of frustration, not because he took my money, but that he was misunderstanding where I was coming from. Like, I was putting my money where my mouth was, that I didn't want to support something that I knew that could harm him. Mm-hmm. So that was a real, pow bang right from the beginning. And how I grew up really was witnessing my parents' relationship that they had with money individually, and then how they interacted with it together. It was like breathing in secondhand smoke, listening to these epic conversations and arguments. So what I always say is I turned like a morbid curiosity into an obsession that led to a profession. Wow. And the interesting thing about my parents is that they ran a really successful business. They were really hardworking. They were both really smart, and they were a complete mess when it came to their money. And I remember, thinking the whole time I was growing up, if they could just get out of their own way, and there's got to be a better way, right? So I was definitely one of those kids that vowed, this is not going to be me when I grow up, but this was what I was witnessing. So it's so easy, when you see your parents are spendthrifts, they teach you how to spend. So you've really got to fight against like not becoming that. And it's still one of my greatest fears that one day I'm going to turn into a spendthrift, even though I haven't. The point I'm telling you this is that there were behaviors that continued all throughout my childhood. And I believe the reasons why they continued was because my parents never really understood the subconscious beliefs they had around money and what was driving them. And had they really looked under the hood, they probably could have stopped some behavior. Okay. So I'm gonna jump forward to when I was 10 and when I was 17. And I'm getting so used to telling these stories that I forget I might be traumatizing, horrifying an audience. So there's a point here to my sharing all of this. When I was 10, my mother was away for a couple of weeks visiting family. My brother and I were home. My dad had an opportunity to buy a car. He had always wanted a Jaguar. And he found one at a great price. He called my mother. He asked her permission. She said no. And he bought the car anyway, garaged it in our garage. And I remember two things. When my mother would call, I was sworn to secrecy. So it made me feel like a crumb that I was keeping the secret from my father. And then the wise ass in me was really wondering, like, does he think she's not going to notice? And I was secretly hoping like she would come home and lower the boom. It did get like an explosion. So it was another case of pretend mission.
Mm.
Fast forward another 7 years when I graduated from high school, and I was standing on a yacht at a dock at a marina, and overlooking my father's shoulder was a yacht with money that was meant for my college education.
I read about that.
And he was informing me, you're on your own, kid. Yeah.
How selfish.
Yes. And, you know, on the surface, like you really could say, what a jerk. Right? And these are definitely jerk moves. However, when you start to figure out what might be driving somebody's behavior, you also start to get some empathy. Believe it or not, it took me a long time to get over my anger. And
I have a lot of empathy for people that have hurt me, and it's just who we are as humans. Sometimes we have a high level of empathy, and other times we just get pissed off and we don't want to, face it, or we just walk away. I am not that person. I have empathy. If somebody is telling me the truth, I think it's the truth. Why would you lie to me? I have empathy. So for you, you had empathy because you knew it wasn't a healthy choice, but he was probably not well in his mind in order for him to do that, because that's not a normal thought process. Right?
No, not at all. Right. So it really gets down to, what were his values? They clearly were not in sync with mine. But let me tell you the point of sharing all this is that not so much to throw my parents under the bus, which I always say that, I do that often and then I try to recover that for them. But really it's to say, one of the things that was really internalized for me was the concept that I would go to college. I grew up being told, you're really smart, you'll be the first in the family to go. My father, just to add insult to injury, he actually took me on college campus tours. And then at the last minute pulled the plug. I probably should have seen it coming. I had witnessed all of this behavior and just assumed that the money would be there. I was a
What about your mother? Did she not have enough strength to say to your father, this isn't happening? So she was submissive to him?
Yeah. So the power dynamic, his belief, if I make the money, I have all the power over all the decisions. And, birds of a feather flock together. So if you're not in the company of other people who are like-minded, they're usually going to drag you down. It's harder to lift them up. Right. And when you're fighting someone who really has just this very deeply internalized behavior pattern, they need to want to change, right? You are talking about the ramifications or, the impact is not necessarily going to get them to see that there's a problem because, it was talked about. The point though, is that we all grow up hearing different things. And one of the things that I internalized was basically that I was a college student in waiting, right? I love to learn, just always anticipated that I would go. And I was always led to believe that the funds would be there to send me. So when that happened, it did nothing to change my mindset, which is the real power of the story, really, is that I didn't stand there on the dock saying, oh crap, my dream can't come true. My brain literally clicked onto college costs a lot of money. I don't have any money. How am I going to get money? Okay, get a job. Boom, boom, boom. The universe started working its magic. So that fall, that happened in June, right after graduating high school. That fall, I got a job at a bank. And almost immediately after getting there, they asked me to take a community college course on banking. And they said, we'll reimburse you 80% of the money if you pass. So I said, sure, I took it. I passed, I got my money back.
Smart.
And the light bulb went on. College tuition reimbursement. That's how I put myself through 8 years of night school to get my degree.
Good for you.
Yeah, but I wasn't standing on that dock going, I've got to find college tuition reimbursement. I had no idea that existed. So I feel like, we always
creative. It is being creative. So those of you that are listening, let's revert them back to them, because many of you feel there is no way to get out of what you're at. Or, I want to go to college, I don't have the money. But here's a perfect example that you're a survivor. You had the mindset that I was going to go to college and I did want to get my degree, and this is how I was going to make it happen. Michelle, that's incredible, because sometimes, we wallow in our sorrow and we don't want to believe that we're going to ever be okay. Lord knows I've had more downturns in my life, but because my mindset is I am a survivor.
Yep.
And when you did the analogy of a weight, and I in my brain, I was thinking, okay, there's a ball and chain trying to drown you, but you got a life jacket on and you're not going to drown. And so it's trying to pull you down. It's that strength to cut that ball or that chain or that weight and know that you are a survivor with your life jacket on. And I've had that analogy so many times in my life. And those of you that have listened and watched me on the Housewives of Orange County for years, you know that most people would not been able to recover from some of the stuff I've gone through. But because I have that life jacket on, because I believe in the power of prayer, the universe, or whatever you want to believe, I believe I'm a survivor for a reason. That's what gives us, women like us, the strength. And I know there's a lot of people listening right now. And if you can visually imagine a life jacket on in the ocean and there is a weight trying to drown you, and visually cutting that weight, somehow getting that weight off your foot, you will survive. But you've got to know that there is a way out, and just doing what you did was the right thing to do. You got a job at a bank and the bank paid for your education. Boom. You didn't have to you wouldn't have been able to do that on a $20,000 a year salary. I'm sure that's close to 20, 30, whatever the numbers are.
Yep.
You get paid for that. Yeah. You see, I worked at a bank for very early on in my lifetime. But so you know that there are creative things. You've got to get quiet and get in a safe place, whether it's your bedroom, whether it's an office, whether it's down by the beach, whether it's on a ski slope, and figure this out. So nobody's going to do this for you. I say that loosely. Maybe they will, but it's up to us as humans to take care of us. My mom and dad used to tell me, you're going to come in this world alone and you're going to leave this world alone. It's that dash, or what you do at that time that you are on this earth, and don't trust that somebody's going to get you where you want to go. So gosh, perfect analogy. So I'm so excited. So keep talking. Sorry to interrupt.
I love the analogies you're making. What you're making me really think about is, we talk about the universe, and people will make fun of the law of attraction and they'll say it's too woo-woo, it's not scientific enough. And we're really trained in the technical, right? That we need more knowledge, and more knowledge is going to get us over the hump of doing more and being more with our money. And we all know there's a gully that we fall into, right? The knowing doing gap. Well, what gets you out of that gully? It's all the mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was actually researching recently, because what you're really talking about are all the soft skills, right? And we think, soft skills are just underrated, right? As if they're fluff. What's really interesting, do you know where soft skills comes from? Because I didn't.
I don't even know what you're talking about with skills.
Okay. So soft skills are our, personality traits, our character, our mindset, right? Like even the visualization that you did about, you cut the anchor and let that go, right? That's all of that stuff is what's considered soft skills. So the Army of all places is where this comes from. So back in the late 60s, what they started noticing is they were training their troops on the machinery, right? The artillery and the tanks and all of that. And what they were noticing was some platoons performed better than others, depending on how they were led. And they got really interested in that. And what where the moniker soft skills comes from is any skill that required touching a piece of machinery was considered hard because it was hard to the touch, and anything else was considered soft to the touch. So I just think it's hilarious that, like, I don't know, I envision like Army fatigues and guys, grunting, belly crawling through obstacle courses and life or death situations. And this is our military that coined this term of soft skills. And the more you research that, what really counts is not just our knowledge. That's like 20% of the game.
Wow.
The other 80% is what's going on between the 6 inches between our ears.
That's incredible. I had a guest on, and she said that between the brain and the stomach, that gut, that lineup is follow your gut. And, you know, many times through my life, I had an employee that I thought was really good, but my gut was telling me she's stealing from you, and ended up she was stealing from me. So but it's interesting, that gut feeling, you know, how you should be following it. So I have some more questions. So right now, what is your profession? What are you doing? Are you mentoring and helping other humans trying to get through this struggles and things?
Yeah, my whole life really has been helping people and what I do is I give them the part of myself that I couldn't give to my parents when I was a kid. That's really what I figured out. And it was always like, there's got to be a better way. So as I, figured out more of my interests, which always was around the emotional side of money and money per se, and got into the field. So I, like you, am an advisor, and I also have a complementary brand and business called MichelleAB, which is strictly focused on the relationship that we have with money, which even when I say that, like, to me, relationship is more a person, right? And money is an inanimate object. So I think it's a little bit weird to say that. But if you think about relationships, right, time and attention is what they need. And that's exactly what our money needs.
Yeah. And I created this platform called Financially Fabulous with Vicki. It's a Facebook platform. And I think that's how we connected initially. And I created a budget course, and we're doing so many really interesting things to be able to help people with money, because money is, is a relationship. We're partnering with debt.com, and the amount of people that have come to us and said, I got out of debt and I went right back into my old patterns, and I got back into credit card debt. I just got them all paid off. It took me 4 years, and now I've got credit card debt again. Yeah. Or I bought too of an expensive of a home, and it's causing stress with our family, and my husband lost a job, and how did we get through this? And it's this relationship with money that if you can get yourself aligned with, spending less, living within your means, and saving whatever you had to, you'll have a good relationship with money. Because in this COVID period, if I didn't have my Kodo insurance bank account in a place that it had never been before, I would have probably had to close my doors. But because I had a really good year in 2019, I just let it sit there. I paid out the bonuses to the staff because we had a good year. I didn't take a paycheck. And I just felt like, you know what, I want to have a really good reserve. And it was a 6-figure reserve that I had never had before. But it was my gut. And I would have never, ever in my mind thought my business was going to be compromised because of COVID. Right. I was able to survive 12 months, paying out my salaries, paying out the rent, paying everything out, because I didn't spend it. I didn't take it as income. I spent it. And so that relationship with money keeps me very disciplined. And, even being on a reality show for 14 years, I paid my taxes every month and I banked the rest. So it was this relationship with money that there is going to be a rainy day. I may get sick and it can't work, or there could be something that happens. Maybe my kids need some help, or who knows what could have been. But because I have a good relationship with money, I never fell prey to, I need a bigger house, I need a bigger car. I actually downsized my car. I leased my car through my company, and I got a cheaper car. So so COVID hit and I couldn't work, I was better than I was in 2019.
I'm ready for the rainy day. Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about with the relationship.
Totally. Can we go back and unpack like those examples that you just gave and what you're doing with the expensive home and the debt boomerang that you just talked about? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I've been really super fortunate to connect with a gentleman by the name of Howard Dvorsky, and he's out of debt.com. And, he has, I think he said 10 million people for the last 20 or 30 years that have gone through their systems. And what he does is he does a debt consolidation or advises bankruptcy or what have you. But he takes 4 years to get these people debt free. And it's a program and they pay a little fee, but let's assuming they've got $40,000 or $50,000 on credit card, he'll do a consolidation or a payoff. And then they pay debt.com, let's say, for instance, to get out of debt. And then the whole goal then is to teach them what not to do, what got them in this situation. So, okay, there's a 0% credit card, so I'm going to roll all my money over into one credit card, cancel those other ones, but they don't cancel the other ones. And they see that 0% interest rate, so they pay the minimum, and then they start their pattern over again, and then they get back into debt. I did, those of you that have equity in your home, I did one of the worst things ever, where 15, 20 years ago, I took equity out of my home to pay off debt. And when I look back on that, my home would be paid for right now if I didn't do that. Number one, I should have never been in debt, because that told me I was spending more than I was making, right? So credit cards are the big of a lot of people pay more for a home that you really can afford. So when that job loss happens, or when you get sick and you can't work, you better be able to afford your bills. So I learned the hard way by consolidating debt out of my house. So I took equity out of my home when I was married, and we paid off credit card debt. And in theory, it looked good, because the home equity line of credit was a lower interest rate than the credit card debt. But what happened then is I got that debt cleared off, and then I went back into charging again. So that was a slap in my reality face, going, what are you doing? I sat down with Don at the time. I said, we're tearing up all credit cards. This is ridiculous. We just got out of debt, and we're doing the same thing again.
Right.
So those of you that are listening, understand it is a pattern. If you don't fix that pattern, you're going to be back into the same situation again. And where I live in Southern California, I believe that there's a lot of people, some of my cast members are renting homes at $15,000 a month, and they're not buying a home. And I don't understand that. So go live in a lesser home and put your down payment down. 10 months would be $150,000 of a down payment on a $400,000 or $500,000 home. Live within your means. But they have this persona that they must live up to a certain, reality. And at the end of the day, they're not doing themselves any justice. They're having 2 or 3 cars, and they're shopping at the finest stores, and they don't have anything in the bank. So I'm a big believer in live below your means, save more than you ever thought you'd need to save, and don't fall prey to the enemy, which is the credit card, right?
Yeah.
So the credit card. By the way, those 0% finance charges, just to touch on that real quick, if you don't pay that off within the first 12 months, it shoots up to 25% or 35%, and you're nowhere ahead. So
they're going to get you.
Be super careful about that.
I love, how real you're being with all your stories. And, what you're making me think about is it's our beliefs and our biology. And we're literally not taught this stuff, right? So let's think about this. When, back in the Stone Age, we were not taught to hoard. So if we think about, saving our money as a form of hoarding, right? A positive form of hoarding. Right. We didn't hoard our money because if we had more, we shared it so that we could help other people stay alive. And conversely, they were going to help us when we were not as abundant, right? That has not left us. And that social need to cooperate and belong drives a lot of our behavior. So just going back to those 2 examples, which I find really fascinating, like having an expensive home that you can't afford. Okay. So our biology comes into play in that we may have a sunk cost fallacy, literally and figuratively. So in our mind, we say, I can't get rid of this. I have invested so much psychically and financially that I can't cut my losses. I actually have a friend of mine who, she's in her 60s now. When she was 10, her family moved out of Spanish Harlem in New York into a single family home. And everybody had 3 kids. They all had their own bedrooms, very exciting for the family, first generation American. And within months, the father realized I bit off more than I could chew, and he sold the house, and they went back to an apartment. That had potential to really scar my friend. It didn't. The most beautiful thing happened. Her father taught her when you're over your skis, like get off the slope. And she's ultra responsible with her money. The other one about, boomeranging and getting into debt. What I think is really interesting, and you said it, it's, you talked about how you recognized refinancing and using your home equity and then circling right back to the same drain, and you rack those up. So common, right? Mm-hmm. So there's sort of a set point that we're going to live to unless we literally stop and think, right? So the thing to think about there is kind of that concept of who do we think we are, right? So if we grew up witnessing certain things, or even if we didn't, but we developed a lifestyle where this is what we do, right? That kind of concept, culture we're living in our head, people like me do things like this, that infiltrates us, right? So if you're a credit card holder and, you're within a hair of bouncing checks every month because you're just living close to what you bring in, that's your way of life. Right? That's what people like me do. So to break that cycle, you literally have to start thinking about, well, what kind of person do I want to be and what kind of life do I want to be leading, right? And that starts to help to break it apart. But even earlier in our conversation, you said it best, like no one is going to do the work, right? The soft side is a bunch of work, right? There's nothing soft about it. It's hard as hell to look inside and really see what's going on.
And Michelle, this makes me think about nobody's going to do the work but ourselves. I've got so many followers either on my Instagram, Vicki Gunvalson, or the Financially Fabulous with Vicki Facebook page that are single, widowed, or divorced women. And there's a common thread amongst them stating that I trusted my husband with the finances. I was taking care of the kids. And now I don't even know how I'm going to survive. And that thread has so common with so many people. And, I was fortunate that I was raised by, my mother was a stay-at-home housewife. Be careful what you wish for, because I wanted to be like my mom. But my father was a strong businessman, and he ran a bunch of different companies. I've got a bunch of different companies, but he always taught me, nobody's going to take care of you but you. And I thought, but Mom is being taken care of by you. And he said, having a different life and generation. It's going to take two people typically to earn a living. I want you to be educated. I want you to go out. So all 5 kids educated, got ourselves either running our businesses or managing our own practices. But it makes me think about so many women that weren't raised that way, that had the mindset of taking care of the family, taking care of each other, which is all great and good. But what happens if that guy that you've been living with for 20 years decides to go date his, secretary and leaves you high and dry, or he was not a good steward of money and he spent everything you made? And this is the handicap. This is what life is like right now for so many people. And I can't help it other than I had a good dad that taught me to don't depend upon a man, because they're probably going to disappoint you. And maybe even reversed. It doesn't have to be just the man. It could be the women disappoints and they were the breadwinner. It doesn't really matter. I was divorcing Don 10 years ago, and I remember I said, why do I have to pay alimony? And the judge said, this is a non-gender situation. Doesn't matter if you're a female. I'm like, but women, we want to be taken care of. And she just said, listen, you've been the breadwinner, and it's time to pay up, Tootsie Pie. So when I look back and I thought about all the men that worked, and their women stayed at home, they were also working, taking care of their family. They just weren't out getting a paycheck. Right. And so now they're stuck. What do I do? And so I think, Michelle, there's so much that they can learn from us. Is, those of you that are young and you're starting a family, dip your toe into something. So God forbid, the marriage doesn't survive or there's a death, you better have life insurance on him. Just saying, you've got to be able to take care of yourself. Go back to, we came to this world and we're going to live alone, and it's the people that enter our lives. Some of them could be a chapter, some of them could be a whole book, but statistically we're going to be alone sometime in our life, especially as women.
I love hearing your story. I wish I had as much of a positive one to share. I literally remember watching the dynamic between my parents where he earned and she was powerless, or she perceived herself to be powerless, right? She didn't exert her power and was complicit in many ways, right? Be that as it may, I remember being really young and knowing that I will earn my own money, because there was no way I was going to put myself in that vulnerable of a situation. Now, had I not had that experience, who knows? I mean, I actually was never the kid that aspired to be married and have kids and stay at home. I, at some really early level, knew, like, was going to run a business and
me
consult
neither.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting. It is very heartbreaking, not only to have to learn how to earn an income, but then also learn how to manage your money all at the same time while you're probably taking care of some kids and doing it, right? It's, I have the utmost respect for people in that situation. And
do you have children?
I do. I have 2 sons.
Oh, how did you raise your sons when it comes to being in a relationship with a woman?
Oh, well, I think the biggest example is they see their mother and they see the way that my husband and I are with each other. So, what's really interesting is when my husband and I were dating, we were watching a program where Maria Shriver was on the TV. And I asked him, I said, do you think she's pretty? And this is what he said. He said, I think the more she talks, the smarter she gets. The smarter she gets, the prettier I think she is. Yeah. And I was like, huh.
He does that all the time because a wise woman, you can be the not most beautiful woman on the outside, but they can have a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul and just inspirational, and they become beautiful. Therefore, you can have the most beautiful woman and she's got a hard heart and rude and disrespectful and mean. They become ugly. So I've noticed that on my own show. So I just, in closing, we're almost at our hour mark, and I want to thank everybody that's listening. Hopefully you took a little nugget away from Michelle and I. But Michelle, let the viewers and listeners know where they can reach you.
The best place to find me is on my website, which is MichelleAB.com. So it's 2 L's, MichelleAB.com. And I have a guide there called the Success Formula Guide, which what it helps people do is trace their prior accomplishments and look at them through the lens of skills that are transferable onto their money. Because if you've been successful in one area, you absolutely can become successful with your money. You just need to learn how.
And it's that relationship with money that we need to really be a steward of money and be respectful of money, because money is a tool. That's all it is. When I teach my clients about retirement or insurance and things like that, it is just a tool, and it's a tool to get you the lifestyle or whether it's a lifestyle or a charitable event or to raise your children, whatever you wish to do with it. You need to have a goal with it. You need to, really be a steward of it and know that it may not always be coming in. We are full examples of that right now with COVID. So I want to wish you the very best. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk again. And I want to thank you listeners for tuning in to Reality with Vicki. And don't forget to whoop it up. Do you know how to do that, Michelle?
Tell me.
Okay. Just when you are in a good place in your head, you just have fun and enjoy it. And sometimes you make an ass of yourself, but you know what? It's called whooping it up. So
all right, I love it.
Oh, I want to wish you the very best. That's right. Okay. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Care. Okay. Bye.
Living inspired, fully engaged. You're tuning in to Reality with Vicki Gunvalson.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
one of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.